YouTube as well, so I don't know.
Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener-sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value-for-value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show.
I was listening to the tape delay on the other screen. Good morning. Monday, Manic Monday. Haha. And I am the wannabe Professor Joe. Yeah, thanks, Charlie, for the intro. Welcome to the Road to Concord. We've got a show for you today that might bend a few heads, or I got a feeling most people will tune out, though, because I'm going to ask you a question. Is America still even a country? And it's a serious question. I mean it. I really do. Are we still a country? I don't think we are. This is by definition. And we're not going to waste a lot of time setting this up. We're just going to jump right into this show today. Y'all know, if you've been here any length of time, you know we like definitions here. Well, I'm on a information source that I don't totally trust anymore. This is the modern Merriam-Webster's dictionary. I can't use my Webster's 1828 today, because most of the terms we're going to be discussing were invented after that dictionary was written. So we're going to look at nationality, and I'm going to show you a fallacy, a logical fallacy built right into our good old Merriam-Webster's dictionary. And it's a logical fallacy connected to a definition, which is really bad. But this one here, when I looked up what is a nation, the very first thing it says is nationality. Since 5A. So I went and I looked at nationality. And what's that say? It says national character. Well, what does that mean? Oh, loyalty and devotion to a nation. So I go back to nation. Then it says a political organization, nationality. So I go back to nationality. And what's that mean? It means national status. So what's national? What's nation? This is called circular reasoning. It's a circular argument. You're defining a definition with another definition with another definition that all points back to the other definition. It's like the Spider-Man meme with all three Spider-Men in a triangle pointing at each other. There's no definition here for nation. Merriam-Webster's does not give you a definition for a nation. They're begging the question. This is not an accident. This is intentional. Nation has a definition. They just don't want to give it to you. So I went to Encyclopedia Britannica, which is not a whole lot better than Wikipedia, but it's a better. When I looked for the definition of nation in Encyclopedia Britannica, they didn't give me one. They gave me nation state. So I'm like, okay, let's read what you have to say about nation state there in Encyclopedia Britannica. And it says a nation state, it's a territorial a territorially bounded sovereign polity, i.e., a state. Okay, well, let's stop. What do they mean by sovereign? So when I clicked on the link, it gave me Merriam-Webster's dictionary, which is not necessarily a good thing here. And it says sovereign, a noun, one possessing or held to possess supreme political power or sovereignty, one that exercises supreme authority within a limited sphere and acknowledged later an arbiter or any of the various gold coins and blah, blah, blah. So somebody who has political, a supreme political authority. So I went back to Britannica. Okay, that's what sovereign means, supreme political authority, basically dictator. Okay, so what do you mean by state? Well, I looked that up and I went and followed the link. State, it's a political organization of society or the body politic, or more narrowly, the institutions of government. The state is a form of human association distinguished from other social groups by its purpose, the establishment of order and security, its methods, the laws, and their enforcement, its territory, the area of jurisdiction or geographic boundaries, and finally, by its sovereignty. So the state is the supreme authority. So if you're the head of the state, you get to be a dictator. I'm not liking these definitions that they're giving me, but I went back and I'm going to continue reading. And I'm doing this for a reason, folks. If you're already confused, good. That's the point. There is some order here, but I'll help you out here in a minute. Just hold on. I continued reading. So it's the state. It's a state that is ruled in the name of a community of citizens who identify themselves as a nation. Whoa, 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 whoa. Stop. According to Britannica, a state is a supreme authority ruled in the name of a community. So you're ruling in the name of the people who identify themselves as a nation. But you didn't give me a definition for nation. So what the heck? So this is some sort of entity that is ruled in the name of something that isn't defined. Confusing? Yes. Good. That's the point. If you can't define it, then how do you know what you're talking about? Have you been with this show any length of time? Do you remember how the progressives like to play with language because they think they can control how you think and therefore how you act through language? Do you remember, have you read Orwell's 1984? Have you read Huxley's Brave New World, especially in 1984, but also in Fahrenheit 491 or 4 whatever the heck it is? They think if they take a word away from you, you can't possibly conceive of that thing anymore. Because the people who think like this, who believe like this, think that the meaning, the definition is found in the word. Form and function define, folks, not the word that we assign to it. A feline does not change in its form and function if I call it a gatto and then all of a sudden say, that's a cat. And then the other Spider-Man says, no, that's a feline. It's all the same animal. It doesn't change the way it looks or acts or sounds or feels or tastes or whatever just because I gave it a different label. These people think it does. This group of people who want to control the world. Yeah, Fahrenheit 451. Thank you, Natasha. They think that they can change things just by the way they change your language and control your language. So that's why I say this confusion in Encyclopedia Britannica is not by accident. The confusion in Merriam-Webster's dictionary is not by accident. Well, Joe, there's not a group of people deciding this is how they're going to do things. Are you sure? I'll tell you what there definitely is. There's a spirit behind the people that are doing this, making sure that even if the human beings doing all of this stuff in different countries, different places in the internet, don't get together and coordinate, they're still coordinated. I promise you that. So let's get back to this. We're still circular reasoning here. It says it's a group of people who it's it's a supreme being. It's a totalitarian entity that rules in the name of a community of citizens that think of themselves as something that isn't defined. Well, the legitimacy of a state's rule over a territory and over that population inhabiting that territory stems from the right of a core national group within the state, which may include all or only some of the citizens, their right to self-determination. How can you self-determinate if the sole authority or power is in the government? Oh, well, through elections, Joe, it's democracy. Well, okay, we will all vote to do A, and the government will say, well, you know what, I decided to do B. Well, how are you going to stop it there, people? We'll hold another election. So now more people say, we're going to do A. And the government says, nah, we're going to do C. And it's in a nation that's a thing that has not yet been defined by Encyclopedia Britannica. I could keep going with this. I'm not going to. I don't want to lose the audience with this just too soon yet here. So what is a community? I looked that up next because they were using the word community. It's a unified body of individuals. Unified. Somebody show me unification anywhere in the world. It was among a group. Okay, it's a unified body of individuals such as the people with common interests living in a particular area, broadly the area itself, or it's a group of people with a common characteristic or interest living together within a larger society. That sounds like a nation to me, but they're people living within a larger society. Do you see the circular reasoning? Charlie, would you help me out here? You've been following along. I know you have. Are you confused yet?
Yeah, I'm dizzy because I've been spinning around here and not getting anywhere.
So this is Encyclopedia Britannica, the foremost encyclopedia or one of them in the English world, as in the United Kingdom. Have they defined anything for you yet?
No.
No, they haven't. I wonder why that is. Let's keep going, Charlie. Check this out. What is the difference between a nation and a state? Do you think this might help us any?
I doubt it, but let's try.
A nation, which is a term that they have not defined. A nation is a group of people with a common language, history, culture, and usually geographic territory. A state is an association of people characterized by formal institutions of government, including laws, permanent territorial boundaries, and sovereignty, political independence, they say. Really? Okay. A state may comprise one or more nations, as did the Roman Empire. Folks, oh my God. Okay. A state is not a Roman Empire. Well, Joe, they just said it was. They lied, whether they're aware of it or not. Well, how do you know that, Joe? Do you know the definition of empire? It's not a state. Well, Joe, it's just a specific type of state. No, it isn't. It's an empire or a kingdom. Yes, it comes under political control of one place, but they have specifically designed all of these terms and words so that you think whoever's telling me what to do is the state or the government. Well, according to the definitions, they.
Woo! Okay, I understand it all now.
Yeah. According to the definitions that they have given us so far, just from the Encyclopedia Britannica, which links itself to the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, and those two people and organizations are united through the international intelligentsia, scholastic or scholarly unions and connections. Trust me, this is connected. So what the definitions they've given you so far are, it's all fallacious definition. They're not defining anything in a concrete way. They're using one to define the other. And like in the way they've given us a definition, a state can be a community, but it's not. The state has sovereignty, but it's like a state can be, a nation that has its own sovereignty, like in the Roman Empire. Well, folks, Rome ruled every nation in underneath it. It allowed them to govern themselves as long as they obeyed Rome. But Rome was the ultimate authority, and if you disobeyed, they send the legions to squash you. So you weren't really ruling; you were a vassal nation. You were allowed to have power in your region just as long as you did what you were told to do. So you weren't really ruling, and the people under your nation or your community weren't ruling. So none of this actually works. It doesn't apply. Just like what they give you another possibility here. They say the Austria-Hungary. They say that's another example of a state. The Austria-Hungary Empire. It was an empire. It was a kingdom. It was a conglomeration. That doesn't meet the definition of a state. What it meets the definition of is political control. That's not how I would define state. So I kept looking and I found this. This is brilliant. Or at least as far as we're going. Let's see if this clarifies anything for us. This is from, interestingly enough, Penn State. Penn State College of Earth and Mineral Sciences. State, nation, and nation state. Clarifying misused terminology. What is a state? A state is an independent, sovereign government exercising control over a certain spatially defined and bounded area, whose borders are usually clearly defined and internationally recognized by other states. Communism can never be a state unless you go with the definitions that were given by Britannica. Britannica said usually within a confined border, but not necessarily. It's just a group of people that fall under the same political control, like the Roman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Well, communism wants to control the entire globe. That makes communism a state. Interestingly enough, it also makes Islam a state. Interesting how this works. This article continues. States are tied to territory. It didn't say, this gentleman here or woman or whoever's written this article did not say usually tied to a territory. It says must be. Okay, well, the territory is the globe, Joe. Uh-huh. Well, if you're communist and I leave the globe and go to the moon, you're going to exert your control over me there too, just like Russia did to the cosmonauts, which means now it's the globe and well, it's Earth and the moon. And if I go to Mars, oh, well, it's Earth, moon, and you're going to claim the solar system. And then if I leave to a different, oh, you're going to claim the galaxy in the universe. That's how communism works. So, and that fits the definitions that were given to us according to Britannica. But this definition, states are tied to territory, sovereign or state as absolute ruler over the territory. So the people or the government or the system within that territory is sovereign. They're the ruler. They have clear borders, defends and controls its territory within these borders, is recognized by other countries, diplomatic recognition, passports, treaties, etc. Has clear borders and defends and controls those borders. Charlie, does this country, well, before Trump, did this country defend and control its borders?
Well, we did at one time, but
were we doing it under Biden?
I have a question.
Yes.
And this might be a little off topic because we're talking about our country, but there is this dispute going on in the Mideast about this so-called two-state solution.
You're getting ahead of the lesson plan.
Oh, sorry.
So go ahead. Ask your question.
But show me where Palestine, as they call it, meets the definition of states here that you're talking. I mean, it has no territory. It has no passports, and it has no. It doesn't meet the definition.
Well, hold on now. It meets the definition, right? According to an Encyclopedia Britannica. Remember, that was just a group of people.
Well,
sharing
yeah, it meets the
common interest.
definition maybe of nation, but of state.
They didn't define nation.
Well, that's true. So
And,
I'm
and they
so
define
confused.
state as anything
Yes.
that has a political power and is a common people. Well, the PLO is the political power of the Palestinians. So the Palestinians are a people. The problem with that is the Palestinians are Arabs. So their
Yeah.
state belongs, they belong to Jordan, which
Right.
incidentally is the area that they were originally given
Or
by the
is given
UN
by
for
the
their
yes. Yeah.
nation,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
stolen by other Arabs.
Yeah. Arabs. Yep. Okay.
Ishmael still has his hand raised against all his neighbors.
Okay. Well, I
We'll get
won't
back to
disrupt
that.
anymore.
No, 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 no. The Encyclopedia Britannica was written, their definitions were constructed specifically to aid the practice of balkanization, which is what the
Ah,
Palestinians are. Hold on,
yes.
we're going
Yes.
somewhere with
Yes.
this, folks.
Yes. Yep.
We're
Okay.
going somewhere with this.
Yes. Oh boy.
Now
Yeah,
we're back
Jimmy
to this
might be
article
calling
again.
in today if he's watching.
Yes. We're working on this article from Penn State. The reason I used it is because they are using the old-fashioned definitions of a state. If I were to reach down there to my 1974 World Encyclopedia and pull out S and look up state, I'm going to find exactly what these people at Penn State are telling me. So number 2, defining what is a state. States have bureaucracies staffed by states' own personnel. Has a national bureaucracy staffed by government personnel, legal system, educational system, hierarchical government units, et cetera, by the state's own personnel. We've got people inside of our bureaucracy now that are representing Palestine and Somalia and Mexico and Bolivia, and they're flat out stating their congressmen or mayors and people like this in this country stating that they are representing foreign entities. That's not a state. Remember the title of this show, Are We Still a Country? Well, I don't know. Are we a country? Are we a state? Are we a community? Are we a people anymore? We're not meeting these definitions. We don't defend, well, we didn't defend our borders under Obama or under Biden or under any supposedly Democratic rule. But I got a little newsflash for you, folks. The Republicans were in power during this period of time. They had the authority to stop this. They allowed it. They allowed it. They're just as guilty. Do not tell me that you're different. You are not. Form and function. I don't care what you say. I want to see what you do. Well, Trump funded the border. He didn't get it. He didn't get the wall built while he was president. Oh, well, the Democrats got in his way, and the Republicans let him, because there was a point in under 45 when they had control. They let him. Don't tell me. We do not control our borders. We do not defend them. And we've got people within our government that are out. They're loyal to other countries. They lied in their oath of office. So far, are we a state? No. Are we a nation? I don't know. That was never defined. If I look it up in the Webster's Dictionary, 1828, it doesn't come up with a definition, not like the ones we're dealing with today. It comes up with an old-fashioned definition, but you won't find that definition in Merriam-Webster's. You'll find a fallacy. You didn't find a definition in Britannica. They don't give you one. They don't even offer it. That's not a mistake. So number 3, states monopolize certain functions within its territory. Controls legitimate use of force within its territory. We're going to get to this in the second hour of the show today, but remember this. Controls money at national scale, prints currency, collects state taxes. We don't control the money in this country. We gave that to a private organization. Makes rules within its territory, laws, regulations, taxes, citizenship, et cetera. We've got unelected, unaccountable, we've got a bureaucracy that just makes up things willy-nilly that's outside the legal system. Controls much information within its territory. Oh, now that we have. We do have people controlling and censoring information. States try to form nations within their borders. Now we're going to get somewhere. through symbols, education, national interest, etc. So what is a nation? A nation is a group of people who see themselves as a cohesive and coherent unit based on shared cultural and historical criteria. Nations are socially constructed units not given by nature. I would disagree with that. Because just pay attention, you'll see what I'll get. They're going to defeat themselves here in a minute. Their existence, definition, and members can change dramatically based on circumstances. Nations, in some ways, can be thought of as imagined communities that are bound together by notions of unity that can pivot around religion, ethnic identity, language, cultural practice, and so forth. The concept and practice of a nation work to establish who belongs and who does not, insider versus outsider. Such conceptions often ignore political boundaries such that a single nation may spill over into multiple states. Furthermore, states, nations, not every nation has a state. Etc., Kurds, Roma, Palestine. Some states may contain all or part of multiple nations. And what about a nation state? A nation state is an idea of homogeneous national government by its own sovereign state, where each state contains one nation. This idea is almost never achieved. Well, I was thinking about another spot where I was reading. Do you know where nation used to come from? Used to come from familial ties. The nation of Abraham, the nation of Muhammad, the nation of Ishmael. I like the definition they gave here. That's a modern definition, but notice how they tied it to the Kurds, Roma, meaning the Gypsies, and the Palestinians. Here's the problem you have with their definition of nation. They even admit it. Nation state doesn't exist. Neither does nation. Do you have a nation of Islam? Islam calls it the Ummah. No. What do you mean, no? Well, I have Sunni and Shia. That's a division within the nation. Well, those are two different nations, Joe. Uh-huh. And how far down the line do you want to get with this division of nation and this definition of nation? Nation is the artificial term here. Nation is a political term. It's been invented to obfuscate, confuse what we're really dealing with here. What are we really dealing with? We're dealing with the justification of a political action that otherwise falls outside of the realm of international law. I'm trying to, my computer won't let me look this up. Charlie, do me a favor real quick. Go to the Webster's Dictionary 1828 and look up the definition. Hold on. It just let me do this. Let's see if I can get the definition of nation real quick, because this is the definition of nation that our founding fathers would have had. Still loading here for some reason. Here we go. Let me share this with you. Get this up here. Nation. A body of people inhabiting the same country or united under the same sovereign or government as the English nation. The French nation is, it often happens that many nations are subject to one government, in which case the word nation usually denotes a body of people speaking the same language, or body that has formerly been under a distinct government, but has been conquered or incorporated with a larger nation. Thus, the Empire of Russia comprehends many nations, as did formerly the Roman and Persian empires. Nation, as its etymology imports, originally denoted a family or race of men descended from a common progenitor, like tribe, but by immigration, conquest, and intermixture of men of different families, this distinction is in most countries lost. So now that, Joe, they're saying that a nation, an empire can be a nation. Technically, you got to pay attention to what they just said. Said it's a body of people inhabiting the same country or united under the same sovereign or government, the same controlling power. Well, if you're going to say a nation is a group of people, this is going to get very confusing. We've got a term here that's very difficult to actually define. And this is intentional. I'll get to how I would define it later. Well, you know what? Let's do it right now. In my terms, my definition, a nation is no different than a state. They're the same thing. Well, Joe, you can have many nations under a state. No, 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 no. You can have many states under a nation. If I'm looking at the nation of Islam, I can have many political entities called a state, which are bounded by geographic regions under that. Rome, if I'm going to look at Rome as a state, well, that's a political entity. Nation, why is it not a nation? Well, nation is a group of people. You know what you're fighting with here? You're trying to define groups such as familial groups or racial groups. You're trying to define a group of people that are united and ruled by something other than a political government. What would rule my family? Me. What would rule the greater extent of my family? Like if we had a family reunion, the eldest patriarch, whoever he may be, would be the rule. Who rules a mob family? The Godfather. Who rules the Ummah? Whoever the caliphate is. Who rules the Catholic Church? The Pope. Who rules the body of the Messiah? The Messiah. They're not necessarily the same there, folks. Catholic Church is not part of the body of Messiah. If it was, it wouldn't be led by the vicar, the Pope. Yeah, I know. That's a Wednesday show, Joe. It's a good example, though. So what you're trying to define is a group of people under authority that is not necessarily codified as a political entity. What do you mean by that, Joe? Here's where we've got to start putting a little meat into the bones here. Let's go back to sovereign. Sovereign is one possessing or held to possess supreme political power or sovereignty. So that's somebody who has or believes they have supreme political power. Let me introduce you to a source I don't often use because it's a lousy source, extremely biased. This is the Southern Poverty Law Center. This is a lawless group of people that claims to be watching out for terrorists and racists and all sorts of other stuff. They're hypocrites. They project. This is a very vile and nasty and dangerous website and group of people. But let's look at what this story here is about. Let me blow this up so we can read it a little easier. All right. The strange subculture of the sovereign citizens movement has been growing at a fast pace since the late 2000s. Sovereigns hold truly bizarre, complex, and anti-government beliefs that are rooted in racism and anti-Semitism. Oh, do they? Do you know anything about the sovereign citizen movement? They're not rooted in these things. Southern Poverty Law Center just happens to label everybody that they disagree with as a white supremacist or a racist. Like I said, it is a vile group of human beings, partially funded by the United States government. They're an NGO, non-government organization that does the work of the deep state. So the Southern Poverty Law Center says these sovereign citizens believe they get to decide which laws they obey and which to ignore, and they don't think that they should have to pay taxes. They participate in protests against government or use paper terrorism, filing bogus lawsuits and fake liens on properties to carry out their mission of disorder. Sometimes they get violent. As you're going to see next hour, this defines the modern democratic movement. Filing all suits are bogus lawsuits. They call it lawfare, and they think that's fine if they're doing it. They instigate violence, and they flout our laws and decides which laws they're going to follow and which laws they're not going to follow. And it's okay if they do it. They say, here are our resources on the sovereign citizen movement. And they give you this blah, 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 blah. Read some of their resources, and you're going to find out that the Southern Poverty Law Center is distorting what these supposed resources actually say. Do you want to know another word for sovereign citizen? Libertarian. libertarian. Haven't I not told you that if I put 100 libertarians in a room, I have 100 kings, 100 gods, and they're all going to decide for themselves what they should and should not do? I can remember a time like that in a history book I read, and the world got wiped out by a flood for it.
Yeah, I just read this just the other. In fact, it was in my Hebrew homework this last week. It uses a phrase, "Every man doing what's right in his own eyes." Yeah, worked out really good for him too.
So I have a nation of one everywhere I go. That's what the sovereign citizens say. Folks, when you define for other people what they do and don't believe and who they are and aren't, and then you force that on them, and then you punish them if they don't accept your tyranny, and you claim you're legitimate because you quote unquote got elected, and because you got elected you can defy the laws yourself because now you're sovereign. You're not a legal entity. You're under the law of nature, and you're forcing your will on others because you have, by hook or by crook, or by the willing participation of those under you, you have seized, at least partially, the power in that group of people, that region, that community, that society, that entity of human beings, and you're forcing others to do what you want them to do against their will. Is that a nation? Well, I don't know. Nation wasn't defined anywhere today. But are we a nation? Better yet, are you still a state? If you have a deep state, a left state, a right state, and you got people still trying to cling to what they understand the Constitution actually means, are you still a state? Because you got a bunch of different governments. We had the Supreme Court, one of the justices had to chastise the other lower justices, saying that you can disagree with Supreme Court rulings, but you have no authority to disagree with our ultimate. When we tell you this is the way it is, you don't get to disagree with that. And yet lower courts are doing that, and Trump is obeying them. Where is the system of government in this country now? Are you under the rule of law? I tell you, no, you're not. Do you have a common culture? I tell you, no, you don't. Do you have a common nation? I tell you, no, you don't. Are we still a nation? Are we still a state? Are we still anything? You know, this movement about Christian nationalism. Have you ever looked up how they, quote unquote, they define nationalism? What is a nationalist movement? A nationalist movement may be a political or cultural or both. A political nationalist movement is a political, sometimes also military, struggle by a national group for statehood or for some measure of independence from or autonomy within a larger political association, such as another state or an empire. It may also be a struggle by a national group within its own nation state for wider rights for its members. Or it may be a reactionary struggle by such a national group against wider rights for minority groups. A cultural nationalist movement, which historically often precedes a political movement, is an effort to rediscover, preserve, study, or reinvigorate the language or cultural traditions of a nation. Okay, so given the definitions of nations that Britannica has given us so far, we have no understanding of what a nation is. They never defined it, other than it's just a group of people. So we've got nationalist movement is a group of people that are trying to set up their own state. Do you see why I say nation should be thought to be equivalent to a state? They want to rule themselves, and they already do. If they didn't rule themselves, how could they be separately identified from any other of the people in which they are? If every one of the 350 something million people within the geographical boundaries of the lower 48 states, if we all of a sudden, well, you got the nation of the Cherokee. Well, how do I know? not all Cherokees. There's been so much racial mixing within marriages. I can't look at you and tell you're a Cherokee. And even if you're still pure blood as a Native American, are you a Cherokee, an Iroquois, a Chippewa, a Seminole? I don't know. I can look at you and tell that you're Native American maybe, but I don't know that you're Nation of Cherokee. So it's not a visual thing. So what, are you running around wearing a sign that says the Cherokee Nation? Well, if you are, you have your own system of government, whether it's got political recognition or not. So basically what they're saying is a nation is a state that has not had recognition by other states as being politically established. Their roundabout way of arguing what a nation is just a group of people who want to be recognized as a political organization. Notice what they say. It's a movement that precedes politics. And the way they've defined this, well, the civil rights movement would have been nationalist movement. It's the nation of black people in the United States, which is why if you don't conform to what that cultural movement tells you, you're an Uncle Tom, because you're not part of the nation now. Now, don't think that this is, I'm not arguing nothing here. I'm trying to skirt a fine line that I'm having a conversation that should be behind a paywall. The Nation of Islam, according to Farrakhan, that's a racist group of people, black people. They will occasionally let whites in their group, but for the most part, it's African Americans. Well, I don't like that term. They are American citizens of a Negro persuasion. And they loosely call themselves Muslims. They're not according to Muhammad. They're a wannabe political organization. They run themselves as though they are a state within the United States. And because they don't have an official recognition as a political power, we just call them nations. The Nation of Islam under Farrakhan, Louis Farrakhan, or the nation, the Cherokee Nation, because they don't have political power. Of course, the Cherokee Nation, if they have reservations, that's supposed to be a state, but they're controlled by the United States. So how are they a state? You don't have political power or self-government or self-determination if somebody over you can tell you what you can and can't do. So that defeats the definition we read earlier today. What is this all about? What am I looking at here? Well, if you were here on Wednesday, I'd tell you what you're looking at is Babel. It's confusion. But I'll tell you what you're looking at politically. Balkanization. Now, Britannica kind of gets this one correct because they didn't expect some idiot like me to go here. I want to blow this one up for you. Balkanization, division of multinational state into smaller, ethnically homogeneous entities. So it's a division of a politically recognized state that contains different groups of people who want to be states, but rather than by ideology, we're going to divide them by their skin color, by their ethnicity. The term also is used to refer to ethnic conflict within multi-ethnic states, like the United States. It was coined at the end of World War I to describe the ethnic and political fragmentation that followed the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. That was the Muslim Empire. Particularly in the Balkans, the term balkanization is today invoked to explain the disintegration of some multi-ethnic state and their division into dictatorship, ethnic cleansing, and civil war. Let's see if I can get myself back up here. I submit that in large part, what's happening to the United States right now, today, is the intentional balkanization of the United States, the dividing of America across ethnic lines. Ethnicity, which is also linked to language and culture. But in our country, because That's not the focus. Culture's not the focus. They're using race. They're using the United States' original sin, so to speak, the specter of slavery, which is connected to Negro individuals, individuals of the Negro race. And I'm trying to use technical terms here, folks. I'm not trying to be insulting. I'd call myself of what we call Caucasian race. There are many subdivisions of what we call Negro. There are many sub-ethnicities of what we would call Caucasian. So because of that specter, that ghost of our foundation, it serves the political purpose to divide us according to racial groups. Just like this is why they define Islam as racism. Islam's a religion, folks. How do you be racist against Catholics? They're all different skin colors in Catholicism, but they won't ever say you're racist against Catholics. They'll tell you you're racist against the Jews. They call it, but notice that they don't say, they say anti-Semitism. Folks, there are a lot of people who are Semitic that are not Jewish. There are Caucasians who are Semitic. Caucasian, whites, Aryans, you know? Do you know what Iran means in Farsi? It means Aryan. But the Iranians are Semitic. In other words, they come from Shem. Oh my God, a nation comes from a single patriarch. So the nation of white people, who'd have thunk it? The problem with that is Muslims are a nation of white people. Well, no, they're Arabs. That's Ishmael. Where the heck did I get white people from? Well, the Hebrews are supposed to be black. And you haven't been doing your research very well. Aren't Jews Semitic? Well, yeah. Well, do your research and you know that that's going to come from Shem. No, it doesn't, Joe. Yeah, it does. The Iranians are Semitic too. Same patriarch, same founder, same nation of Shem. So how can one group of people be very dark skinned and the other be very light skinned coming from the same patriarch? They're the same nation according to what we just read. Of course, you know, it got differentiated over the years because of intermixing of things. We don't stop to think about the origins of this mess. It's too hard, too much work, doesn't benefit anything. So you're going to just jump into this mess that we're in this world right now and try to figure it out without going back to the origin? Well, congratulations. No wonder you're stuck in Babel, the confusion of God, both spiritually and every other way there can be, linguistically, culturally. This is chaos. And it's being imposed on this country intentionally in the name of fighting racism. It's racism in the name of fighting racism. And they're trying to create ethnic countries, states within the boundaries of the United States. They want Negro Americans to have their own rule, separate rules for them. You're going to see that in the next hour. We got to punish every white person because they're vile and vicious. We're going to let Latino people sort of kind of rule themselves because they're not as dark as skinned as we are. So, but they're not white, so they're not, except of course if you're a non-Caucasian Latino. Folks, that's all just made up words. Those are made up entities. Race, according to your skin color, is a made up entity. Thank you, Karl Marx and Charles Darwin. Once upon a time, race was denoted by your language. The idea of race as we have it today is only 500 years old, folks. But all this confusion is brought about intentionally to destroy the nation. You don't have this type of trouble in most other Western countries, except from Islam. And that's because you have another state invading the state of Germany or the state of France or the state of Italy, if you do not recognize that Islam is a state, even by the way Britannica defined it, the only thing missing is national boundary. Well, Islam claims the globe. So you have a state of Islam invading the European states, the sovereign European states. You have the sovereign state of Islam waging war with the sovereign states of the European Union. You have the sovereign state of Islam waging war with the sovereign state of the United States. You have the sovereign state of communism, kind of rooted in the states of Europe, of the EU, under the guise of socialism. And you have the sovereign state of communism in the United States, rooted in place under the guise of progressivism or liberalism, however you want to use the word. So the sovereign state of communism in this country is at war with the original founded state, what vestiges of it still exist. And both of those are now being invaded by the sovereign state of Islam, which was invited in by the sovereign state of communism, so that they could both defeat the sovereign state of the founding fathers, in which case they will then have a fight between the sovereign state of communism and the sovereign state of Islam, both of which claim the entire world as their own. You think I'm wrong? Wait till I show you the stories I have for you. So, how do you define nation? I'm not going to be able to give you an answer today. How do I define a country? Well, it's a region bound by a border. Well, okay, if you're a communist, the country is the globe, and the moon, and Mars, and the solar system, and the galaxy, and the universe, if you're a communist. Well, if you're an Islamist, it's the same thing. Guess what? If you're Christian nationalism, right? And why do they have to say white Christian nationalism? That's intentional. That's so I can paint Christians with the stain of racism. Well, if you're a Christian, you're supposed to belong to a state of heaven, ruled by the Father and his Son. This is confusion and chaos. We don't have a common culture anymore. We don't have a common language. I've been watching some shows on YouTube, and most of my commercials are in Spanish. I got a little newsflash for you. If you're advertising to me in Spanish, I will not buy your product. I don't care. I'll go without. I'm not biased against people of Spanish descent. I'm not biased against people of Latino descent, whatever that term means. I'm biased against people who invade my country and won't assimilate, because then that's what that is. It's an invasion, a form and function. If you bring your state into mine, or your nation, or however we're going to define these terms, if you're going to bring it into mine and then try to take over and force me to live according to your ways, well, folks, we're going to have to play a little game of Latinos and cowboys, or a little game of cowboys and Muslims. Or we're going to go away. But you see, now the thing there is they're going to tell you, well, you see, that's your white racism, Joe. You morons don't realize that there were a lot of black cowboys. There were a lot of them, because that was a job back in the old days that didn't care what color your skin was. It cared whether or not you were tough enough to do a very rough job. And if you were, they'd hire you. Do some research and stay out of the biased history books. Go find some that have letters or accountings of people in their journals and in their diaries that report this stuff firsthand from the time in which it was done. They have a different view of the world around them than the one our history books are giving us. Well, why would that be? But the people writing your history books have a political agenda to destroy this nation. Why does everybody want to destroy the United States and Israel? I got an answer for you. Tune in on Wednesdays. But my question again, are we a nation? Are we a state? Well, Joe, yeah, we're a state because we're recognized, we're nationally recognized by the other nations as being a political entity. Are we? Which entity? The deep state? The one we have now when Republicans are in charge? The one we have when Democrats are in charge? Or the one that the founding fathers said that we were supposed to be operating under? Which of those governments is recognized? Or is it the government that is run by the courts? Or the government that's run by the media? Which one? Or the government that's run by the lower governments like the states, where they do whatever the heck they want, no matter what the federal government tells them? Or the counties? Which one? Which one's recognized internationally? It's not a rhetorical question. Can anybody tell me? Which one? Oh, well, the one the founding fathers established. How do you know? Did they say that? No. So how do you know? Mission accomplished. Balkanize the United States along ethnic lines, break down its system of government so that you have chaos. Now all we need is national upheaval so that everybody will beg for the tyrant to come in and give us peace and security in return for giving away our liberties and our rights. We'll give him our obedience and our obeisance. We'll give whoever it is that claims to be able to bring peace and security, we'll give them our worship, trust them entirely. And then you know what you'll get? Neither peace nor security. Because that was never what they were going to give you. They just want to be in charge. And then you'll finally have a nation state again. Because you'll have a dictator who will tell you, this is our nation, this is our state, this is our community, this is what it means to be all of these things. If you don't like it, off with your head. Is the United States still a nation? We're going to go to take the break. 6 minutes. When we come back, I'm going to show you some stories. You tell me whether or not we're still a nation. I'll see you in 6 minutes. Charlie? Welcome back. I'm in a bit of a somber mood, so please forgive me. Our founding fathers believed, the ones who established this country, they believed that we are equal in our rights, not in our abilities, not in our talents. We're equal as moral agents. We have equal right to our life, to the way we want it, to conscience, to property. And they believed that governments were established primarily to protect the rights that we have, each and every one of us individually. They also believed that we should be a republic, not a democracy, so that the right of the individual is never trampled in the name of the majority. They called democracy the tyranny of the majority. And that's why we're not a democracy. So if you were under the Republican system of government that they established according to the ideals and principles that they espoused, socialism in any form would be contrary to the principles of our Declaration of Independence and therefore unconstitutional, because you would be taking from one for the benefit of another. You would be taking the labor of another individual or their property or their whatever, their will, for the benefit of another. And it doesn't matter if we get together and say, we voted for it. It doesn't matter. Not in their eyes. So the system of government was set up to enforce these ideals. And when that system of government ceases to enforce those ideals, that system of government is no more. It has been usurped, taken over, subverted, conquered. And we're back in the state where Jefferson says that we have a right to reestablish the government we want as a people. Take that where you want to go with it, but it might be time to water a tree. But then again, only if we do it lawfully. I want to take you to a series of articles that I pulled up. I'm just got to get them up here. It's Gateway Pundit. I'll try it this way. This is Cullen Lindbarger, August 23rd, 2025. Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch delivers a stinging message to black-robed tyrants who are sabotaging Trump and defying rulings from the court. Well, it's more than that. They're destroying our system of government. Down here, there's a pull quote from Gorsuch. It says the California Supreme Court explained that suits based on any expressed or implied contract within the United States do not belong in a district court under the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA, but in the Court of Federal Claims under the Tucker Act. So in other words, the California Supreme Court said this is where these cases belong. So rather than follow that directive, the district court, in this case, in the case he's talking about, permitted a suit involving materially identical grants to proceed to final judgment under the APA, Gorsuch wrote. As a support for its course, the district court invoked the, quote, persuasive authority of the dissents in California and an earlier Court of Appeals decisions California repudiated. That was an error. Okay, well, what's that got to do with anything? The way the legal system is supposed to work is if you have a system of 5 or 9 judges and they rule on a case, then the majority is the opinion that you're supposed to follow in the lesser courts. So what did these lesser courts do? When the Supreme Court of California told them do it this way, they came along and said, well, we agree with the dissent. So we are hereby de facto declaring ourselves a member of the California Supreme Court without actually being there, casting our vote for the dissent, which now makes us the majority, and we're going to go ahead and do what the heck we want. That's not the rule of law. That's tyranny. Why are these judges still on the bench? This is happening all across this country at every level. The judges are doing whatever the heck they please, which is exactly what Thomas Jefferson told us was going to happen. Now we'll sit here and we'll say, that's wrong. What are we doing about it? Personally, I think it's time to heat up the tar and pluck a few chickens. Maybe find the rail somewhere. But we're not going to do anything to them. They control the system. It's too late. You're not going to be able to fix this problem. But tell me something. Do you have a country where the sovereign is whoever has the ability to invoke their will in that little part of the world? Apparently, the Supreme Court is not sovereign over the state of California, and the state of California's Supreme Court is not so sovereign over this district court. They do what they will. The Supreme Court made a ruling, and these judges in the lesser districts in D.C. are doing whatever they want. And Trump is obeying it. He's following these unlawful rulings from the court. He's kowtowing. He's not supposed to do that. He's supposed to be the sovereign. He's the chief executive. He's not doing his job. That's why I do not call him president anymore. He gave that to the courts. The laws are being written by bureaucracies and by default by staffers and quote unquote aides. Congress doesn't do its job. We shouldn't call them representatives or senators anymore. We should call them actors. It's what they are. Form and function. They're pretending to serve a role, but they're just there to act. Remember what Rush told you? Politics is Hollywood for ugly people. Do not ever forget that many a truth is said in jest. Rush Limbaugh told us a lot of truths. He just didn't want you to know exactly what they meant. I now believe that. I firmly believe that. I have no trust for him anymore. And a lot of people hate me for that. I have no trust for Glenn Beck anymore for very similar reasons. Because I did pay attention to what they said, but also to what they did in the end result of their words. And I think both of them are Rush, before he died, was leading people astray. And I think Glenn Beck still is too. I don't know that Glenn knows it. I think Rush did. So what's the next story I have for you? Here's another one. Let's get this blown up here. Watch. Weird CNN host argues that it is a bad thing for teenagers are having less sex and Americans aren't drinking as much alcohol. CNN pundit Michael Smirnoff argued on air that a decrease in teenagers having sex and Americans drinking alcohol is actually bad news. What do you have in common with that guy as far as moral principles and ideology? What do you have in common with him? I have nothing in common with him. He's on CNN. CNN must agree with him. They put him on there. They censor people that they don't like. Why? Where's our commonality with this thinking? Well, there are people who agree with him. He's not alone here, folks. Here's another story. Blaze Media. This is from the Steve Day Show. Children as assets. Gay couple's viral IVF video reveals just how far Obergefell has gone. And this is after a gay couple shared their embryo selection process online. Blaze TV's Steve Deace argues that marriage equality paved the way for commodification of life. This is a truly horrifying story. It's from Blaze. It's August 19th, 2025. Essentially, one of two gay men on a video bragging about how they had a whole bunch of test tube babies made up and then tested them for the genetic traits and qualities they wanted. And he was saying, well, we've got so many of them still viable. So many of them that might have survived to be implanted. And he's all excited because his surrogate mothers are going to have his perfect little designer baby. That's straight out of a dystopian movie right there, folks. But that is the direct result of after the ball, the normalization of homosexuality. Got a comment on the board from Natasha. Ah, yes, another reason women should not donate their eggs. Yes, true. This is a deliberate perversion of natural law. Anything that goes against natural law is a perversion of the Creator's intent, and therefore, I would argue, the definition of evil. But this is championed by a great number of people in this country. So if you've got a gay couple bragging about making designer babies and not worried about the ones that weren't viable, what do you have in common with those people? I have nothing in common with them. And I will not tolerate them in my life. But they have, those and those like them have control over the use of force in this country at the moment. So they'd probably, if I ever said anything that really harmed them, they'd probably put me in jail or kill me. I don't care. More and more, I'm coming to the realization that I do not want to live in the world that is being created all around my. I don't want no part of this. There are some things. There reaches a point where this life is not worth living. If you have to partake in the evil and accept it and tolerate it and consider it normal just to survive and continue breathing, sell your soul for one more breath. And you're no longer yourself. You now belong to them. Well, up to you whether or not you want to do that. It's not my world. Another story from the Blaze Media. This is Christopher Bedford, August 20th. The political end of the Epstein case. They're blaming Democrats. Democrats overplayed their hand and voters just aren't buying tickets to the Epstein show anymore. President Trump said that we're the problem if we still want the Epstein papers disclosed. And he just recently came out and said, a lot of good people are going to get hurt. A lot of innocent people going to get hurt if we put those papers out. So he's not going to do it. Breaking a promise. And MAGA forgives him. So let me ask you a question. Where are your principles? If you're a leftist, you were defending Epstein and hiding those papers until Trump got in office, and then you wanted them disclosed. If you were right-wing, you wanted those papers exposed until Trump got in office, and now you don't want them exposed. You switch sides on an issue according to which letter is in power, which team is got the football and running with it. How are you any different than those judges that we started this segment off with? Well, I don't believe in the majority. Democracy be damned. Those judges were wrong. I'm persuaded by the minority's argument, which in most cases doesn't even address the law. It addresses their feelings of social justice. How are we any different? Where are your principles? Who are you? What type of person is in your mirror? Are you working on that person, or are you trying to work on everybody else? This is what I voted for. You know, I voted for Trump to do these things. I've heard that. I've seen that a lot on X. Okay, cool. The left voted to do the things that Biden did to you, but you complained. Now that your guy's doing them, you're okay with it. Biden was using a lot of executive orders to do things that you thought were unconstitutional. But now that Trump is using executive orders to do things of questionable constitutional legality, you're okay with that. As long as your team has the ball, you're okay with it. I'm not. When it gets quiet and I'm alone with nothing but my own thoughts, I realize I have to be able to justify myself before my maker someday. I got enough trouble. I don't need to chase after more than especially where I know better. So how are we a nation when we have things like this? According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, we're at least two. or the Democrat nation and the Republican nation. Well, let me ask you another question, brothers and sisters. What country are those two parties fighting for? Well, I'm fighting for liberal country, communism. Well, I'm fighting for conservative country, fascism. Very good. Neither of you is fighting for the United States of America's principles on founding principles and ideas. Neither of you. Both of you claim to be. We're fighting for America. It's equivocation. You both have different definitions of America, none of which the founding fathers would recognize. None of them. Comment on the board from John Quest. Exactly like what Trump is doing in D.C., using the military and our tax dollars attempt to clean up D.C. If it were the other way around, the Democrats doing this, the Republicans would be crying martial law. Except for one problem there, Mr. Quest. If you've read the Constitution, Trump doesn't have a right to do this necessarily, but Congress does and should. D.C. is not supposed to run itself. Congress is supposed to run it according to the Constitution. But we passed a law that changes that. That's an unconstitutional law. The courts uphold it. So when you have lawlessness, because you have a D.C. government that shouldn't exist, refusing to do its job, well, then you no longer have a representative form of government there. And if Congress isn't going to do its job, then yes, I could make a constitutional argument that Trump has a duty at that point to step in and take over. And the only means of law enforcement available to the executive is the military. So while I sympathize with your point there, I think that one is of questionable resolution before a just body of the law. Courts that adhere to the Constitution as it was originally conceived and intended. But I'm thinking about other things, like where Trump is going to say you can't have mail-in ballots by executive decree. That there's no constitutional basis for that. He can't do that, but the right's cheering him. How about this one, Christian? President Trump just talked to Fox News about how he hopes to get into heaven. He's just going to do a lot of good things. He's going to work his way into heaven. Says, if I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's I want to try to get to heaven if possible. I hear I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can go to heaven, this will be one of the reasons. I think I saved a lot of lives in India and Pakistan. They were going at it. Planes were being shot down. That's what's going to make me maybe be a nuclear war if I let that go. And I did that through trade. So he stopped the nuclear war, so he deserves to go to heaven. MAGA, you still think that this man is Yahweh's anointed? Or do you think maybe at best he's a Cyrus rather? Used of Yahweh, yes, but not Yahweh's anointed. God may be using him, but that doesn't mean he's a prophet or an apostle or a disciple of Messiah.
Saul was anointed king, and he didn't do too good. But, being anointed doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be righteous.
Yeah, but Yahweh knew it was going to happen there.
Well, yeah, he knows it's going to happen now, too.
And that he allowed Saul to be appointed king for a reason.
He did.
Because Saul could never be king. Remember, the scepter is David's.
Yeah, I know.
Judas. So what?
But nevertheless, he was anointed.
Yes.
So in there are people that believe that Trump was anointed, and it could be, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be righteous.
You know what I meant by anointed in this case.
I know. I'm just making a point that anointing doesn't necessarily mean you're going to.
I appreciate the correction. You are correct. So. I stand corrected. Mea culpa. My apologies.
But anyway, this is.
Don't think he's of the body.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, his comments that he has made about, I'm going to work my way into heaven shows that he does not have, at least as I would understand, the correct understanding of faith to, get there. I mean, I hope he does get there, but you know, he needs to work on that. But
all right, now we're going to get
anyway.
into the ones that really, I don't know how we justify these. Gateway Pundit, August 22nd, 2025, Christina Layla. Breaking. The MS-13 gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia released from prison and back on the streets. That man is an illegal. He was exported for domestic violence, which the left says, we got to get rid of domestic violence. Unless, of course, you're an illegal alien. So the judges told Trump, after Trump deported him, the judges said, you got to bring him back. Trump listened to the judges. He didn't have to. He shouldn't have. It was an illegal order. Brought him back, and then the judges turned him loose. Without bail, I believe, but just let him back out on the streets. And a lot of the people with D's after their name was defending this, cheering this. This is great. We got to have violent domestic abusers and terrorists. MS-13 is a terrorist. It's a gang member. It's a terrorist group. We've got to bring them people in illegally and just let them have all sorts of rights. They have more rights than a U.S. citizen, and we're going to champion that. What do you have in common with the people who supported and advocated this? I'm asking you, what do you have in common? Yeah, he's going to get sent to Uganda. Well, he was going to get sent to El Salvador. He came back. Just because they say it doesn't mean I'm going to believe it. So what do you have in common with that and the people who think that way? How about this one? That illegal that California gave a driver's license to where he couldn't even read English or speak it. They gave him a driver's license. He's an illegal alien. They let him have a commercial driver's license, and he kills 3 people on the roads here in the state of Florida. They have a petition, and over 2.3 million people have signed the petition begging for clemency for illegal truck driver who killed 3 Americans. They suggested counseling and community service. This man was without remorse when it happened. I suggest roadside justice. What do you have in common with those 2.3 million people? Say, Joe, it's only 2.3 million people. Studies show that only 1 in 10 will sign things like this. So I would say if that study holds in this case, there are at least 23 million people who saw the petition, who agree with it. Y'all realize that's a significant part of the population because that's just the ones who saw it. What do you have in common with people who want a murderer to just get counseling and community service? An illegal alien, unremorseful. What do you have in common with those people? Those are Americans that believe in this, or at least they call themselves Americans. They're citizens of the United States, political entity that we call the state of the United States. What do you have in common with them? How about this one? Authorities hit a white man who was savagely beaten during the Cincinnati Ball with a criminal charge following outcry from black community leaders. They stomped him to death or near about. How many of them was it? 13 or something? 45-year-old man. And then a woman that tried to enter. Apparently, this guy used a racial slur. So that justifies attempted murder. And yes, folks, I'm going to tell you right now. If a group of you jumps into a fight and you're beating a man down and he's on the ground and you're stomping on his head with your feet, you are committing attempted murder. That's not just assault and battery. That's attempted murder. And what happened? They let several of these offenders go without bail. They're going to put this man in jail for years. Why? Oh, well, he said something we didn't like. Just because the blacks complained. I'm not a racist. It's got nothing to do with the color of skin. I hate the way this was written. It shouldn't say black community leaders. It should say race baiters using race for political purposes. Because that's what this is. It's got nothing to do with the qualities of a human being based on the color of their skin. But If I say that, it's proof of my racism, according to these type of people. They're using America's original sin for political power. This is why O.J. Simpson got off. It wasn't because he was innocent. They just wanted to get back at Whitey. And how am I not supposed to sound bitter and angry? Because I can't even, the language that you have to use to explain the reality of the world we're in proves that I'm a racist. No, it doesn't. Not if you're listening to me. It proves that I've got a problem with the culture that you have willingly aligned yourself with. Because this is a cultural thing. This is a political cultural thing. Remember what we just read with Encyclopedia Britannica. This is a nation of people who wants to be given political power separate from the United States government. That's what this is. That's called an uprising, according to the Constitution, which is sedition, which is illegal, which technically the president has a duty to put down using the U.S. military. But because they're not using guns and bullets, we refuse to call it an uprising. Okay, what about this? Attempt by Antifa thugs to start a major riot between black and Jewish Brooklyn neighbors completely blows up in their face. I don't care that it blew up. Look at that. That, folks, is the definition of a uniform. They are in military gear or paramilitary gear. They are organized and trained and funded by the political left in this country. So the black community leaders wanting the white victim of a beatdown to get charged, while the black assailants, his attackers, go free without bail, that is the political arm of this internal nation. Now, if you think this is racism, look at the faces in this picture. Most of them are white. It's not about race. It's about politics. It's about power and control. BLM is literally a paramilitary organization. You see that? You see that logo? That flag? It stands for anti-fascista. It's a communist organization from the 1920s Germany. They're communists. That flag is the same logo. The logo that's saying anti-fascists, Antifa, BLM, they're the same organization. The same people are funding them. I don't need to, I haven't given you the book, but it's by Mr. New, NGU. He infiltrated these people. He's written a book on this, an expose. It gets no airplay. You won't even see it on Fox or Glenn Beck. I mean, just barely. But the only people that have really touted it that I'm aware of is Steve Deace. There's a reason Steve Deace, as good as he is, only has an audience of about 4 million. This is an uprising. This is sedition. This is an armed revolt. These people should be put down militarily. And we should run their funding and their organization and their support to the ground. And it should be handled on military terms. This is not a job for law enforcement. This is an internal revolt against the United States. It meets the definition. It meets the definition by international law. But we handle this as domestic terrorism. It's not what it is. How about this? This is from Twitchy. Moronic Chicago mayor, and that's a fallacy. That's ad hominem. Why do you have to say moronic? Just say Chicago mayor threatens to riot if Trump stops violent crime, and wow, that was dumb. That's their title. What he's saying is, I will riot if you send the National Guard to restore order in the state of Chicago, in the city of Chicago. Well, I don't know about whether or not Trump can actually do that legally. That should be the governor of Illinois that does that. But if he does, why isn't he going to file with the courts? Why is he going to riot? That's the threat of violence to get a political desire. That's the definition of terrorism. Why is this man not in jail? He just made a threat of terrorism for political purposes. He's part of the group that nation, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, he's part of the PLO within our country, the Communist, Liberation Organization, the CLO. They're using race to do it as a hammer. It's a shield, political correctness. It's part of the shield of communism. Go read the Frankfurt School of Germany and how they did all this, how they planned it and what they said, how it should work, what political correctness is really all about. I've tried to educate you on this show over the last couple of years. I've tried to give you the receipts. I've shown you where to go find all of it. I tell you where to go. It's not my opinion here, folks. This is the natural, logical result of everything that's come before. There's a reason I go back as far as I can in time to find the origins of a political idea. It's because that's the only way to trace it from its birth to its maturity, so that you can understand it and see how it morphs as time goes on. This right here is an attempt to overthrow the United States. It gets worse. Right here. Islamic extremist terrorist attacks are not a conspiracy theory. Here's the real data. And they go over all the different terrorist attacks by Islam. Okay, why did I do this? I want this one to set up this next story. Muslim student was exempted from suspension in Loudoun County locker room case where boys objected to the presence of female. So when you read the story, what you're going to find is that a bunch of male students objected to a female transgender in the locker room with them, showering with them, dressing with them, changing with them. And out of all these students, 3 of them really objected on religious grounds. 2 of them were Christian, one was Muslim. The Christians got suspended. The Muslim did not. Let me ask you this. What do you have in common with people that favor Islam over Christianity? Islam is literally a fascist government. It's a theocracy that does not tolerate a separate existing quote unquote secular government. It will be Islam or nothing. So why do you favor them over a Christian student who belongs to a religion that will tolerate and actually is told by its own Messiah to render under Caesar? And that God the Father, Yahweh, puts civil government in place according to what the people of that region deserve. So if you've got a tyrannical government, it's because that's what you deserve. Scripture says that. So what do you have in common with the people that choose Islam over Christianity? This is rare. It's a political blog page. Sharia, Michigan. Islamic supremacists seize control of the streets in Dearborn for Ashura. It's a parade championing Muhammad. Look at all those ethnic people there. This is so racist of you, Joe. Most of those faces look white to me, or what we would call Caucasian. They're actually Semites, or a lot of them are. The event, led by Imam Husham al-Husseini, an Iranian government mouthpiece, has sparked significant concerns due to its inflammatory rhetoric, dangerous affiliations, hostility towards America, and support for Sharia law. They chanted for death to America and for Sharia law in the United States. From the river to the sea, they also want to get rid of Israel. They want to destroy the remnant. That's what this is about, spiritually, if you understand it. But all of these stories, these are pictures. It was over 40,000 is what they said. That's probably a conservative estimate. There's that imam, and he has said that, Imam says that, Islam over the United States. They're gonna raise the flag of Islam over the nation's capital. And they're talking about they're wanting to support Palestine. There is no There is no Palestine, folks. It doesn't. Palestine's another political myth. It has never existed as a nation state, or as a state. Never has, ever, in the history of humanity. And yet, we're told it is one. It's for political control. It's the ultimate goal is the eradication of the state of Israel, that's the political entity Israel, and of the Jewish people, the nation of Judah, the descendants of Judah and all those aligned with him. And the attack on the United States is about getting rid of the political entity of the United States as founded by the founding fathers and the people of the book. That's what Islam would call them, meaning the nation of Israel, the house of Israel, all those descended from the northern kingdom. That's what this is about. And that's why they don't attack any other place. So, well, they're going after Europe, Joe. Yes, that's because there are non-believing vestiges of the nation of Israel in Europe, but not the political seat. Joseph resides here now. You doubt me? Look what's happening to the United Kingdom. That's been invited into our shores. It's been funded by our own government. It's being protected by our own government. It's an attack on this country. It's a religious attack on this country. Communism is a secular, what they call secular attack on this country. The deep state is a communistic state, communistic government. You have vast numbers of Islam within that deep state. Obama tied the two together intentionally. So you have two hostile governments within the visible U.S. government. Tell me, where do you get a nation out of that? Are we still a nation? That's my question. Are we? Do we meet the definitions? Well, heck, we didn't even find a definition of a nation. We did according to Webster's 1828. That doesn't work anymore according to Britannica and Wikipedia and Cambridge and everything else I found. Webster's doesn't use that as the modern definition is a circular reasoning fallacy. If you don't know what it is, how can you even talk about it, let alone determine whether or not you still have one? And the last question I'm going to ask you is, how do you save something if you can't even define it? Charlie, comments, thoughts, observations? Or are you going to hide today because I've given you another one of your favorite shows?
Oh, yeah, this one, yeah. I mean, it's evil what they're doing, but.
So let me ask you, are we a nation?
No.
Why?
Because I don't know what a nation is.
Okay, are we a nation state?
No.
No, because a nation state has to be homogeneous, and it's the melting pot. Once upon a time, it was never true, but the idea of the melting pot gave everybody a target to shoot for. So immigrants tried to assimilate. They wanted to become American. They don't want to become American anymore. So you don't even have the lie or the myth of homogeneous ideology, which means you don't have a homogeneous culture. We've been balkanized, primarily along the idea of skin color, but it's actually been a combination of skin color and political ideology and religious. We've been balkanized on every. There was a great Jewish philosopher who once said that a house divided cannot stand.
Yeah. And that's what I see is that, you know, we went through the I don't know what you want to call it, you know, the racism reform, you know, in the early 60s and things like that and stuff and all that. And I mean, there were good reasons for some of that, because there was a lot of, you know, racism, especially in the South where we live here and stuff like that. But we seem to get through that and do better. But now it seems like there's people that want to, you know, because we went through all this stuff about, you know, desegregation and everything and blah 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 blah, and you know, get the people together and you know, and all this. Now they're wanting the exact opposite again. They're trying to segregate. They're trying to separate us again. And this is just from my viewpoint, that most of those calls are coming from those that originally were calling for the putting together.
In some cases, the
I
same
don't
people who
I don't
marched in the
understand this.
60s are now
Yes,
wanting to segregate everybody again.
yes. And I
Because
mean,
remember Alinsky, it's not about ideology, it's just about the movement.
yeah, well, that's
You
true.
never need to solve a problem, you just need the
Yeah.
problem. That's Orwell. Today we fight
Yeah.
for Oceania, tomorrow Pacifica, tomorrow back to Oceania.
Yeah. And I mean, we see it even in our local politics here. I'm following, you
Koopa's
know, the
asking the
city I used to be
question.
with. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who came up with the term melting pot? Oh, that's a good
I
question.
don't know. Yeah, that's
I don't know where that came from either.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing. When a nation / community / culture / city state or nation state or whatever, when a people try to guard, defend, and preserve their way of life, then the idea of the melting pot is not a bad thing.
Right.
Because it gives you a target to shoot for.
Worked great for the Borg.
Yeah, well.
I mean, they all work together. They all, you know, put their talents together and were very successful.
They still
Resistance
have a single
is futile.
queen leader.
They did. But I mean, we joke about it, but I mean, it's horrible that what we see going on, you know.
Well, when people ask me how we fix this, I've said this many times. Either this nation turns back to its original king and repents and seeks his face again, or forget it. You're done, and you deserve his judgment. And I know I can hear it from some people. We were never a theocracy. You haven't listened to Samuel Adams very closely. Because upon the signing of the Declaration, he declared in a speech that we had restored the Messiah to his rightful place and started the experiment of Protestant theocracy.
Yeah, but the problem is, can we even do that? Because I see in this debate that both sides are saying, oh, well, God says this, God says that, and you've got the, you know, and you've got the one Jesus fighting against the other Jesus, and you know, you still have that segregation, if you will, because they're not unified in one, because you've got all this. I mean, I guess this kind of explains how we got here, because it's intentional. This division is intentional, because that's where we get all these denominations, all this different stuff. Because like you just said earlier, there's this philosopher that says a house divided is going to fall.
Charlie,
so
think about what Wednesday's class is, in my view of 2 Thessalonians 2, and see if I just set us up for Wednesday.
Oh boy, yes, you sure. Oh, you sure did. Yeah.
It was by design.
Well, yeah. But it's true. It's true.
And I'm done talking for today. I'm talked out. And I have, we're going to leave off perfectly. This is going to be a perfect segue into Wednesday's show on
Yep.
We Who Are Lost. Second
Good setup.
Thessalonians 2.
Good job.
The way I see it, I know people think it's the Antichrist. I do not. And I'll be referring to this show in Wednesday to show you why. So we're done. I was hoping, I was dragging my feet just a little bit just in case we got a phone call, but we'll see.
Yeah, he might not have been able to watch today live or whatever.
He said he was busy. He'll catch back up.
Yeah, it's okay.
Folks, I'm done with this. I do not see how we have a nation anymore. I don't see how we save this place.
No.
I don't.
Sorry, Mormons. Ain't gonna happen.
No. And I don't see why we should even try.
No.
With what we've become, I don't want to save it. It's not worth saving.
No. You couldn't put it back together. There's not enough people of the same mind to put it back together. I don't believe. I hate to say that, but
I could put 50 people in a room, give them a copy of the Constitution, the Declaration rather. Let them all read the Declaration and then give me a one-page essay on what it means. And I bet you I'll have 50 different ideas on what it means.
Yep.
That's because I have 50 sovereign citizens in that room. And I think this is the whole purpose of humanity, is to prove both to the heavenly realm and this material realm that no, beings of free will cannot rule themselves in accordance with the natural and revealed laws of the Maker and his creation. So outside of being one with him, you cannot do it. I can't do it. Nobody can do it. I think that's the whole purpose. They tried it in heaven and it failed. We were created to teach a lesson. I think we're teaching it very effectively. Problem is we can't even learn it ourselves.
Yep. Goes back to what I kept harping on my children as they were growing up. I said, the greatest gift that your Father in heaven's given you is your agency to choose and make choices. And the greatest gift you can give back to him is to choose what he wants you to do.
Amen. We'll leave it at that today. We'll be back on Wednesday. We're teaching 2 Thessalonians 2, a new way to look at it. If you haven't been around me for any length of time, it'll be new to most people. Hint, I do not think it's about the Antichrist. So we'll do that. And then on Friday, we'll be finishing up section 1 on the Unseen Realm book study. We thank each and every one of you for being here. We hope that somehow or another we've given you something to think about. And I mean, think about. Noodle it out for yourself. You don't have to agree with us. You could disagree. That's just fine. All we ask for is that you disagree in a sound, valid, and rational way. Give us a logical argument that follows the applied rules of logic as to why we're wrong, and we will definitely listen and give you consideration. You can email us. You can post it in the comments section. Call in next time. Charlie's just joking about emailing us and we'll think about it. It's so that we know that you're a real person. That's why we ask you for an email, because if you email us and you're giving us a fictitious email name like Frankenboop123, it's not likely you're going to get on the phone. We don't have the money to screen the way most places do. This is how we protect ourselves from having disruptive callers on the board like we had when we first started the show. So, yes, Ray 13T says that our goal should be to win as many as possible to the kingdom of Yahweh. Oh, I agree with that, brother. I do. So we will leave you and thank you for being here. If you do like the show, by all means, please share it. Warn everybody it's different. I know that. It's not for everybody. It's an acquired taste. I'm an acquired taste. But you will not hang out with us for a length of time without starting to learn to think for yourself. We won't allow that. You'll either love us and start learning how to think for yourself, or you'll hate us and have to start learning learning to think for yourself so that you can oppose us. It's one way or the other. But you can't be a drone, sit here and listen to us and be entertained. We won't allow that. So until next time, folks, y'all stay safe, take care. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.